So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you listen to this. This is Matthew Bailey. Not without, well, basically without Ricardo for this episode here, but I do have my four, film loving colleagues here. Started off with the incomparable CC Lilford.
Howdy, howdy.
Julien Neaves, welcome to the fool. Well,
Greetings.
yeah, I should say welcome back. Welcome back, my bad.
Yeah, thank you, thank
Uh,
you.
Alice Oscura
Hi guys.
and Sommerleigh Pollonais.
Hello, hello.
And this is the first 2021 episode of Retrospect Reviews here. And today is pretty much a special episode. This is something unique, something a bit different, because if you've been following the show for a while now, this is where we look back at shows that we've seen in our childhood, basically from the 80s to about the 2000s, basically. And we just kind of look back at the film with, more mature eyes, and then we more or less see if it still works or not, right? But in this case, we're talking about films that, existed long before we even existed, right? Um, and this essentially, well, if we can make the argument, and this is going to be a running theme for this episode here. Well, the first set of monsters that I should say film monsters, basically, right? And technically the first cinematic universe that we've ever gotten. That would be from the kind folks at Universal, well, now Universal Studios. So last week, it was recording here, on their Fair, the Home of Horror YouTube channel, they basically had some of their films up for a whole week. That would be 1931's Dracula, Frankenstein, 1931's Frankenstein, 1932's The Mummy, 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein. Just making sure I haven't forgotten anything. 1941's The Wolfman, and 19... just read it off here. And 1951's Abbott and... No, 1948's...
48.
Yeah, 1948's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So
And
you
we
basically
also have
had
the
those...
Invisible Man.
Yes, oh gosh. Did I
Yeah.
see that? Okay, probably didn't. I'm just basically reading it off of this
Yeah.
linear this right now. So that's how I got a little confused here. But yeah, basically they had these 7 films up for basically free, on the YouTube channel. So
Right.
I took the advantage. I, reached out to these guys here, and we all checked it out. Some of these films we've seen before in some way, shape, or form. Others I personally have, basically seen for the first time, right? I'll get to those in a bit. But yeah, just a little brief little history into how I got into those films. Well, how I got familiar with these. Just mainly through pop culture.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
knowing about, when it comes to Halloween and, cartoons, or, goofy, silly cartoons based off of like Halloween characters, you always
Mhm.
associate the Dracula, or, the Frankenstein, or the Mummy, and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So you've
Right.
always seen these characters, reincarnated in different forms and whatnot, which I'll mention in this episode here. So yeah, it just kind of came, I would just introduce these characters mainly through pop culture, right? But I haven't really seen any films up until a particular point. So when I was introduced to TCM, one of the best stations ever, there was I think there was during the 31 Days of Halloween. Yes, I can't remember what year I saw it, right? But I remember seeing Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Bride of Frankenstein for the first time. But I haven't seen the other films that were on the list of films that they, that they basically had for free on their YouTube channel, right? That would be Universal. So yeah, I mean, I saw them, and at the time I kind of appreciated them for what they were, Sorry, they had some cheesy moments here and there, but I mean, it's movies from the 30s and 40s, right? So it's those kind of things you can kind of let slide, and because of their inclusion into pop culture, and also because of how we can kind of make fun of them now. So we can always make the jokes about the way how Frankenstein walks, or the way how Dracula talks, and all these different things. You kind of just look at it like, oh, okay, this is where it actually starts. You know what I mean? So for me personally, it's not like it's not like I hold them near and dear to my heart. But as far as a cinephile goes, I just kind of appreciate them as just part of film culture, and just seeing how these films, right, which
Right.
took these wild and crazy ideas for their time, of course, and yeah, pretty much influence movies going forward, and not just in horror. You know, it's really really amazing to me. So, Summer, your introduction to these Universal classic monsters.
Well, some of it is like by, osmosis, pop culture, that sort of thing. But you guys know me, diehard horror fan from a very young age. So I actually had seen a few of these already. Of course, that would be more like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, that sort of thing. It was always just fascinating to me as a child, how iconic these characters have remained all throughout. How the type of stamp that Universal put on the way these creatures and these monsters and so forth have been depicted in film all the way forward to now. When you think about it, it's really amazing that they pulled that off, because a lot of what was created here, um it's become the rule book. It's become the guidelines for how to show these monsters. So some of these, to me, I think it would be like my dad definitely would have rented some of these films. That's probably how I saw them. I can't remember all of them. Some of them would have been like on classic sci-fi channel, I think. I would have caught these. But the for me, like the first time I saw the Bride of Frankenstein and the Mummy was because we decided to do this. So I love that we all came together and we said, guys, we have to go through these Universal movies, and that way you get to see them with fresh eyes, so to speak. And even the ones that I revisited, like for instance, I just quickly say Dracula for me was always so high up. It still very much is, but I can recognize, as you say, Matthew, the some of the cheese factor of it now. But yeah, that's basically it for me. I think it's just stuff I came across on television, stuff my dad may have rented, and stuff that I watched for what we're doing right now.
All right, nice, 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 and thank you so much for actually posting the article. I forgot from what site you put it up on your
Yes,
Movie
yeah.
Junkies continued Facebook page, and I was like, oh wow, and that's when the idea clicked. Like we just need to do this,
Right.
for retrospect
Yeah.
reviews.
Well, you came up with the idea to do it for retrospectives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know,
It's a
but I wouldn't have
step.
known about it unless I wouldn't have known about it if you hadn't posted that. I thought that was like really cool.
That's what the
Uh,
Queen of is for.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Julian, your quick history with the Universal Classic Monsters.
Yeah, I mean, yourself and Summer. I mean, everybody knows about these classic characters. I mean, you see them. As I was saying, you see the future versions of them and the different incarnations, but you always know, like, okay, this is how Dracula's supposed to be, how the Wolfman is supposed to be, how Frankenstein is supposed to be. In terms of when I saw them, I think it would have been much as an adult watching them on Sci-Fi Channel, and well, I think it would have just been Dracula and the first couple of Frankenstein's and Wolfman, and for me it's kind of like kind of a film education. It's like, oh, watching, and it's kind of amazing to see what they were able to achieve. I mean, in the 30s,
Yes.
Right.
in terms of
Mhm.
how do you build tension? How do you have special effects with when it was so limited? I mean, so it's quite amazing. This real kind of a kind of a time travel watching these movies, but they're just refreshing and just very comforting. And some of them revisiting was like, okay, this wasn't as good as I thought, and some others was like,
I
wow,
know,
this is,
right?
yeah,
True.
it's like this is even way better than I thought. So I mean, I really really enjoyed going back and checking over these films, and it makes me feel to go on and kind of unearth some more. So I had a real good time doing this.
Yeah, as I said on it, these films, right? So the linear list I was reading from was basically the back of, well, I actually don't own this yet. That would be the Universal Classic Monsters complete 30 film collection.
Woo.
Right.
And these are like 30, well, basically 30 films from 1931 to 1956. Well, 31 films actually, because they actually have the Spanish version of Dracula. I don't think there's any big change outside of the dialogue, but But the point is just it's all these films. Well, assuming there's all of them in this one collection. And like I was telling CC through Facebook, I kind of need this in my life. Just so I could kind of brag to my friends, like, hey, I actually have this. Look at all these films. Woo, right? Speaking of which, though, CC, your introduction to the Universal Classic Monsters.
So yeah, no, I get to be that friend, and I get to boast that I do have that collection.
Aw.
The complete, like the entire set that has every single one of them, all the way from Dracula to The Creature Walks Among Us in 1956, and then all the different Abbott and
Oh, I'm
Costello.
so jealous.
That's awesome.
I
That's
know,
awesome.
right?
I'm like, it's a nice box set. It was something definitely out of my price range for a while, but then like I wanted an Amazon gift card once, and it was like one of the first things. I was like now I have it. But no, I have been even before I was obsessed with horror. I was obsessed with monsters, right? Monsters, and like I can remember kind of first discovering the Universal monsters through cultural osmosis at like the age of maybe 8, 9, like thereabout, and just like developing this absolute obsession, right? Because I feel like the thing that the Universal films are remembered best for is that like, unlike more conventional horror, like you could argue this, but I would always argue that with the Universal films, the selling point is the monsters. Like Universal very quickly realized people weren't coming for like, the human heroes. People were coming because they wanted to see the monsters, like the monsters as characters, and so in that way, they remain they remain like very influential for that reason, because it's some of the
Yeah.
earliest think of like monsters and non-human characters as like the big selling point, like the most important characters of your movie, and like that's how you inspire a whole legion of filmmakers like the likes of Guillermo del Toro, who take that whole philosophy and apply it to their filmmaking.
Yes. And win Oscars, right? I mean,
I know, like
Shape of Water, right? Like think about that
like,
for a second.
like The Shape of Water, fun fact, started life as Del Toro's belated sequel to The Creature from the Black Lagoon that he pitched to
Yeah.
Universal.
Not surprised. Mm-hmm.
And he pitched it to Universal, and Universal turned it down, so he like filed the serial numbers off and sold it to Fox Searchlight instead. And like I've always loved monsters. I've always been obsessed with monsters, and the fact that the Universal Studios always like turned these guys into superstars was always something that drew me quite a bit. Although I did not watch the films themselves until I was later. Like I remember one October, my sister and I just decided that we wanted to like marathon like the not all the sequels, but like the original films at the very least. Is just like one October was just going to be the month we were going to go through the Universal monster movies, and that was a great time. Even from like a filmmaking perspective, and we'll get into this with each of the individuals. Spoiler alert: Mummy is my favorite of the bunch. Invisible Man's a close second. But
okay.
like, no, Mummy by like light years. I that's legit one of my favorite horror films of all time. But like, I love all these films for like from a filmmaking perspective and the way they handle horror. And yeah, you can't talk about them without talking about the mark they had on pop culture, and the fact that like I feel like even when anyone does anything with the Universal monsters, even when they decide they're not going to do it like Universal did, even that is kind of a reaction, right?
Yes.
Because they're assuming that they basically the way these monsters are portrayed is so synonymous with Universal's portrayal, and they're so entrenched in popular culture that even when a filmmaker sets out to do something different, they are keeping the Universal films in mind, right? Like they have like at the back of their mind, they're like, I'm either going to do this like the Universal film, or I'm going to do my own thing. So you look at something like you look at something successful like Lee Whannell's Invisible Man that takes the basic premise of the original film, but kind of acknowledging that it exists, decides to go in a very different direction with it. Like the very basic premise, and like make it an actual like, and make it more of a horror film for like a more modern audience, but keeping the basic premise and the basic horror intact. Versus someone like, I don't know, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula or Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein, that is clearly a visceral reaction to kind of distance themselves from the original Universal film stylistically and
I,
things like that.
I'm gonna talk about Coppola's film in a bit, but continue.
Oh Lord. No, yeah, no, absolutely. And like, look, I could write a book on the strange surrealness of like Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. Like, good Lord. I don't know.
You know,
That
I haven't seen the film. I remember when it came out,
Yeah, I have.
and
most
something
It's
about it just I don't
it,
know. Because this came okay. So sorry to cut you. So basically,
no, it's
this
fine.
yeah. So basically, like in the 90s, right? Like right after
Right.
Bram Stoker's Dracula came out in 92, right? There was like this boom of like these, sort of out there horror films. Like,
Yeah, like
they weren't like the
well, like
Chuckies or whatnot. Like they were just taking the classic horrors, like the classic horror characters, and bringing new life, right? So
well,
right
those
after Bram
things
Stoker's, there
almost
was
like
there
characters.
was
A lot of
basically
them.
one sec. Basically there was Interview with the Vampire, I believe that came out in 93, right?
Yeah.
And then right after that was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I remember seeing the trailer. I was too young to watch the movie anyway, but I never heard anybody really talk about it. Maybe it was garbage, I don't know. But it
I
just kind of got forgotten. But those first two films, Bram Stoker's and Interview with the Vampire, you remember those as 90s horror films. But
oh yeah.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I don't know what happened, right?
Mary,
But yeah, continue.
so Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is I could, if you ever want to do a retrospect reviews on that, I am the like resident expert because like no, that film is strange. It's not good. It's like Kenneth Branagh's over the top theatrical style applied to a moody horror film, and so like
I see.
it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining, but it's not the greatest movie. And what I kind of love about it is you look at it and like there's all these little areas where you can see Branagh was clearly confronted with the original Universal film and took a very sharp right turn, right? Like kind of like, the Universal did it this way, I'm going to do not that, kind of. And like I feel like you can see that throughout. And that's a mark. That is when everyone who is doing a particular character has to kind of bend over backwards to avoid what you did. You've left this like permanent fingerprint upon the culture, right?
yes.
Right.
It's one of the things I appreciate about them.
Okay. All right. Well, Alice, saving the best for last. Reason being is that you actually wrote reviews, like written reviews, of each of the 7 films that we're going to talk about right now on both your Dark Alice Reviews Facebook page and Red Mango Reviews website. Yeah. So and just reading through them, there was some factoids that I didn't even know. So thanks for filling us on that. But
No problem.
clearly you are a huge fan of these films. So yeah, take it away. Your history with these movies.
Well, my history is I had a very weird situation when I was growing up in terms of my dad was so much older than my mom, and he knew so much about the older culture of certain things. My dad was born in 1917, so he basically been through 2 of the world wars. So I had it from the horse's mouth when he actually went to the cinema to see these movies,
Wow.
and his literal reaction to having to walk home after seeing Bela Lugosi's Dracula in the dark when electricity was just very, very sparse.
Mm.
And he basically he expressed to me that he was scared out of his mind watching these movies. And I just, from listening to him, I just got so interested in the genre, and it was a way that I was able to bond with my dad watching these older movies, including James Bond movies and so on. I have an obsession with the James Bond movies because of him as well. So I should say I owe it to my dad that I love these classic movies so much.
Right. That's nice, man. Yeah.
Yes. And also I'm a big nerd. I just like to research everything under the sky.
Mood.
Hence the factoid. Yeah.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's jump in proper now to these movies now. So 7 films actually, I should say. So kicking things off is the OG of the OG cinematic universe. That would be 1921's Dracula, right? Or as I call the version for Count Von Count from Sesame Street. Because I'm sorry, when you watch
Oh,
Bela
yeah, no.
Lugosi's Dracula, it's literal count from
It
Sesame Street.
is.
Very
It
good.
is.
Yep.
Can we talk about how this movie is 10 years away from being 100 years old now?
Wow.
Yes.
That's
In,
that's mind blowing.
in
Really
10
is.
Yep.
in 10 years, I was thinking about this because I watched the original King Kong a few nights back and I had a similar thought. But in 10 years, Dracula will officially be 100 years old.
Yeah.
Like, good lord.
You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna take like the highest definition Blu-ray disc or
Ooh.
format available, and they're going to
And
put a high
re-release it.
price on that and sell it.
I
This
just
is
want,
see,
like,
this is what I love about movies is that it's really like music. It's really the only true form of immortality that exists. You know.
right.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
you look back and you'll be like, oh my goodness, it's like an actual vampire. It's 100 years old. You know.
For real, for real.
Well, like I was thinking about because you were just talking about how it's the Count von Count. Well, yeah, he's the Count von Count. It's also Count Chocula. It's also
Yes.
every like
Oh
every
yeah. I forgot
every
about that serial.
like every vampire you have ever seen that does the very heavy accent Transylvania. Like it's this movie, right?
Yep.
And that is immortality. That
It
is
is, it is, yeah.
immortality.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say something a little controversial. I hope you guys agree with me. If you don't, you don't. I would put it like this, right? So if this is the first like true Dracula movie, the last true one, like okay, so if I could just take two Dracula movies like out of all out of the pantheon of Dracula movies ever made, it would be this one here, and it would be 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Because to me,
Absolutely.
after
Yes.
Francis Ford
100%.
Coppola
Yeah.
killed it with that movie,
Yeah,
it's one of
yeah,
my
yeah,
all-time
yeah.
favorite
Yeah.
movies.
Totally agree with
Period.
you.
Yeah.
I don't care about anything else after that. I don't care about any incarnation of Dracula after that. No offense to Luke Evans with Dracula Untold. No offense to that guy who was in Blade Trinity. I don't care.
Oh
I didn't even care
God.
about Dracula 2000. I remember when it came out, I was like, no,
With
because
Gerard
a
Butler,
couple
of
of
course
film
not.
exists. I don't need anything
The
else.
the deceased Dracula that showed on Netflix recently is the
That was
best
cool. That was
that
cool.
we
That was
got
cool. That was cool.
since it's the best that we've gotten since then. It's the best that
Yeah.
we've gotten since the Coppola movie.
I don't know.
Mhm.
I feel like best. Okay, well, okay, best since the Coppola movie. I could maybe agree with that. I think one of my favorite in like retellings of Dracula is the Hammer one from the 1970s, well 60s. I mean, with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
those I need to jump into for real because I
Yeah.
only saw
Yeah.
I think it's called Dracula Prince of Darkness. I think
I
that's
I'm
the
a
only
big
one
a
I saw.
fan as well as Frank Langella's Dracula. That
Heard
I
the
thought,
thing.
Right,
yeah,
I remember
I
that.
thought that
Mm.
was excellent as well.
Right. But yes, so for me, those two films matter in terms of where that character was just brilliantly realized,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So just run through this quick thoughts on the show, right? For me, this is not top favorite of the Universal classic monster movies, but its influence is just so out. It's just so in your face. You just can't help but just admire it. So you mean it? So like in my case, I don't love it, but there's just so much in it to really admire and just respect, right? For one thing, the cinematography, which of course is influenced by German expressionism, is just so well handled.
Mm.
Um, I do understand, the time period of the movie's release, the pre-code era. So yeah, I wish that there was some music in it. Cause it's kind of weird seeing scenes that I'm supposed to be scared of. I'm not I'm not hearing any music to kind of back it up, but whatever. We do get this, we do hear Swan Lake at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie, and I'm like, all right, well, okay. This is me seeing this for the second time in like ages, right? So forgive me.
Right.
Um, there's also the set design I thought was excellent actually. Like the interior of Dracula's castle alone is just brilliant, right? Bela Lugosi though, he just commands every single scene that he's in, and it's something about the guy's face though. And every time they do a close up, there's like this light that's always shining on his eyes, so you always see like his eyes.
Right.
I
Yeah.
love that. He has best lines like I'm Dracula. You know what I mean? Timeless. Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make, timeless, right? Although I love Gary Oldman spinning it, that was really cool. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna reference Bella, but I'm gonna do my own thing to like, I do my own thing there. You know what I mean? I really, really dug that. Um, and yeah, you know what I mean? It's just how ominous and creepy it is. There's some fantastic framing in this movie, by the way. Like there's a scene where Renfield faints, right? Because he notices some weird stuff, right, with Dracula. Then there's a shot where Dracula kind of comes in front of the door, and you
Hmm.
see like three brides in front of him. Like just the framing of that shot alone was great, you know. So yeah, I mean, for its time, you know what I mean? It just well, I forgot to mention Todd Browning, you know, directing this film and whatnot. You know, he would be the director of I still don't know why it's infamous, the classic Freaks, right? But yeah, I really thought that he did a great job here. I mean, yeah, this is the first time we really see this character come to life for this movie. So, no, it's not the scariest show out there, but just in terms of what the man should do for its time, yeah, I mean, I can't help but admire it. So if I have to rate it, like 4.5 out of 5, man. I mean, this is a classic, true and true. And yeah, I would love to see, read some sort of 100, some 100 anniversary, for it. Well, I don't know how Universal is gonna spin it, but I have a feeling it's gonna put out some disc and give us X amount of versions. Maybe we might get some, Japanese version of it or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's timeless. It's a masterpiece. It just changed the game. I mean, I can't be mad at that. Juliet, any thoughts on 1921's Dracula?
I have many thoughts on 1921 Dracula.
Ah,
Yeah. We watching this movie. I was like, was this the same movie I watched all those years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. It did not hold up for me well at all. I think what I did like, I like the visuals of it, the whole kind of very gothic, dark mood of it. I loved Bela Lugosi. You could tell he just really just took control and commanded that character, and like you could see that that there's thought into the lying and into the movement and everything. I could realize why this became the iconic representation of Dracula. I thought the actor who played Redfield, whose name I can't remember, he was really good. He was
Dwight
kind
Frye.
of,
Dwight
yeah,
Dwight
Fry.
Frye.
Dwight Fry, yeah, he
yes,
was
yes, yes.
Yeah.
You good?
he was just playing the crazy person over the top. I think after Dracula, he was my favorite
Although,
thing.
sorry to cut you, but
Yeah,
although
go
I
ahead.
kind of fancy the guy from Bram Stoker's because he was just so over the top with his madness.
Oh, Tom Waits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. How can I forget his name? Duh, shit, yeah, whatever. But yeah,
I,
yeah,
I, I,
continue, Jordan.
that's yeah. I had so much fun with him, but yeah, I didn't really find it scary. As Alice mentioned in her review, those bats. Oh my god! It's like
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, I
them bats
understand.
too.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. I mean, you really didn't have much choice, but oh, did you have to show them bats so often? They look
Yeah.
so
One thing,
so
one thing,
They
right?
bad.
were proud of
One
those
thing.
You know.
bats. They were
Um,
I
proud
don't
of
know. I don't know why. I don't know why they were proud of those
well,
bats. Those bats
well,
was
here's the thing,
awful.
right? Like I'm not sure if there's like an actual way you could train bats. I doubt it, but you tell me you could just, I don't know, well, not capture one, but at least get one somewhere from some cave somewhere, and just put it out and see where it flies and just record that, right? But also there was this weird shot where I saw a armadillo. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Armadillos are scary? Okay, well,
Yeah,
uh,
Like,
that
just
was.
for somebody who's never seen an armadillo, those things look very scary. So,
Yeah.
okay. I
But
like
what
armadillos,
what
but that's
is
just me.
this? What is this
It's
strange
a
animal?
scavenger, you know. I
Yeah.
think they use it because an armadillo is a scavenger. So I think that I don't know if they were using it in a metaphorical sense, so I'm reading too much into it.
I,
In
I, I feel like it's not that. I feel like it's just a very foreign looking animal. So they put
Oh
it
my!
in there,
so they just
for the
decide to
identity.
throw an armadillo, right?
Oh
Yeah,
my!
because this is something some people, and probably in 1931, not a lot of people have ever actually seen an armadillo. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah,
looks like something otherworldly, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Oh
right.
my!
Imagine some person in the audience back in 1931 screaming when they saw armadillo.
Well, I feel like this is one of the reasons why I always appreciate Todd Browning as a filmmaker, right? Because he seems to be one of those filmmakers who his first instinct is, okay, I'm going to scare them. But if he doesn't, but I feel like in his whole idea of I want to scare my audience, he also includes a lot of just strange imagery. Like, part of what makes Todd Browning's films effective is that he combines scary or haunting imagery, but also will throw in just like strange or weird shit in there, kind of.
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
armadillo. People haven't seen this. It's kind of weird. Maybe a scavenger connection might actually be part of it. So I'll just throw that on there for a little bit. Like, I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna have Bella's eyes glow. Like, it's kind of like I feel like if David Lynch were to do an adaptation of Dracula, it would probably veer more towards what Browning came up with, kind of, right?
Right.
Like, less of a conventional, more of like haunting imagery and kind of, but also like when it can't be like outright haunting, just like strange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I feel like is the film's greatest strength. I like it for like minimalistic horror, kind of. Like, it's a very stripped, like, I mean, as a big fan of the book, and like, it's not my favorite of the Universal films, of the Universal monster films, and I like it a lot, but it's not my favorite. And part of that's coming from as like a big fan of the book. Like, I love the book. The book is one of the best pieces of horror writing I think that exists.
Right.
And what I like about Browning's approach to the movie is that it's a kind of a stripped down, minimalistic, kind of leaner, fast pace. Like, it only clocks in at like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't waste any time and like gets to where it's going pretty quickly. And like, Browning doesn't mess around with a lot of dialogue or explanations. It's more like imagery and atmosphere. And I feel like there are very few films that can set atmosphere as well as Dracula.
Well, that probably comes from a place of they based it more on the theatrical stage play than the book itself. So that strips it down, as you say, and it's like you would see a theatrical play. There wouldn't be much of a lot of stuff going on there. The focus is going to be on those main characters.
Right.
So I think that it works really well in that, especially the fact that it's a horror movie. It's taking place in an isolated setting. So that whole stripped down bare thing, it does make you, let's say you put yourself in the shoes of Renfield, you do feel quite isolated and quite afraid of what may come because there's nothing there to really hold on to.
Yes, which is where the film, like, even if the film may not to contemporary audiences be outright scary, although I would argue there are some bits that are quite effective, it still creates, at the very least, an unnerving atmosphere at its best, which is something that I feel like is definitely something for like a filmmaking perspective to study, and like a reason why it still like is like something that can still be studied, and something that it definitely succeeds at and has aged well is its sense of atmosphere and visuals.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Julia, I don't know if you have anything else to weigh in quickly before we get to Alice.
Well, let me jump in quick. I just like, I think from the theatrical adaptation is where you find that a lot of stuff is spoken about and not seen. Like, they say, oh, look, we saw a wolf running there. Dracula is a wolf, and and talking about Lucy and the beautiful lady and stuff. And just the ending where Dracula is killed off screen and he makes noises as though he's having rough coitus. I'm sorry, that did not work for me. I was like, no, that's not working. Yeah. So so I appreciate it for what it is, but going back and rewatching it, I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have thought. So a 7 out of 10 for me, my ranking.
All right. CC, before we get to Alice, what would you rate 921's Dracula?
An 8. An 8 out of 10. Like, for me, an 8 out of 10, which is my pretty good. Obviously got a couple problems or some issues, things like that, but still like worth revisiting, and still something I find myself thinking about and something I find myself recommending. Like, a 7 is either like a really good B movie, or I watched this once and it was not bad, but never gonna watch it again. And like 8 is like a step up from that.
Right. Alice, your quick thoughts on Dracula and rating, of course.
Okay. Well, Dracula for me, because I've seen it before, I enjoyed watching it now, with a sense of maturity. I can look at it for what it is. It's a work of art. Yes, you get the the cheese in between, like with the strange creature, the armadillo, and the flopping up and down bat and stuff like that. But I can look at it for what it is because, like some mentioned, yes, it was a stage play, and actually the same actor Bela Lugosi was Dracula in the stage play as well. So a lot of his movements, I say, would have mimicked what he learned from his theatrical debut, I should say. A lot of the movements of the cape and the way that he would hunch down and threaten, a lot of it is visuals for me. Yes, there was no background music, not a lot of dialogue, but just to look at the environment and the way that people would move on his screen and the commanding presence that Bela Lugosi had on his screen because he was 6'1". He was like
Wow.
taller.
Okay.
Yeah, he was
I was
taller than
pretty tall.
everybody else on his screen. That alone in itself is something to make anybody feel very diminutive next to him. Um, as well too. I thought that they should have given the Van Helsing character a bit more screen time. They just kind of
Yeah,
stuck him
agreed.
in there kind of randomly
Hmm.
because at first I forgot which character was Van Helsing. They just showed you, okay, they were doing the autopsy on Lucy, and I said, is that Van Helsing? Is it him? Is it not him? Because they weren't calling him by name until like the next scene. And I was like, oh yes, that's Van Helsing, because I couldn't remember. Um, I gave Dracula 7 out of 10. Yeah, although I love Bela Lugosi, I give it a 7 out of 10 because this is not one of my most favorite Universal monsters. The Invisible Man is actually my favorite one.
All right, all right.
Yeah,
Well, I feel like I've given a higher score than everyone just because I don't know,
yeah.
I just
Well,
appreciate the film as just part of
I didn't get to
film
score it
culture
yet.
there. Yeah, so I don't know, like maybe I was just a little too fair for it. Maybe I should have given it
Well,
a
no.
four, but still,
To
I
to
you
your
know,
credit, I have a strict rule that when I'm rating a film, especially like when I'm rating a film, I refuse to take like historical significance into account. Like I am rating purely on like
Hmm.
how good it is and what my response to it is. Those
right, right.
two criteria. So like my rating is that's me. Like I refuse to rate based on history because like then you end up with the top 250 on IMDb staying the
I
top
know.
250.
Yeah, for real,
like
for real, for real.
like
All right. Well. Okay. So note to self going forward. I'm gonna put a little bit more, objectivity into these
right.
reviews here. Last but not least, Sommerleigh, your quick thoughts on Dracula.
Well, I'm first of all out of these seven films, I would say this is like number three for me in the list, and I would give it a 7 out of 10 as well. What I like here really is you talk about the lack of music, Matthew, but I think it works because of the fact that it's so eerie and it's so isolated in Dracula's castle that it adds to the menace. That kind of lack of sound, a kind of feeling of not quite it's like you stepped into a different world when you're in that castle. So it for me that kind of it works on that level. What I like here and what I appreciate with what this character has done, what Lugosi did with this character is before this we had Max Schreck's Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And I had him
Yes,
down,
yes, yes.
yeah, I've listed him as the ugliest vampire that has ever existed.
I
So,
know,
I see.
right?
so
I,
where we
Them fingers though, like, ugh,
Yes. So
ugh.
where we have Nosferatu as a classic idea of what a vampire monster is really supposed to be, there we have then we have what Lugosi does here is give us the seductive Dracula.
yeah.
This is where everybody now has built up that vampires are quote unquote sexy. And it comes from this, it comes from the way he, as Alice said, that his height and the way he moved, and he's very imposing when he stands next to a woman, he almost covers her, that kind of thing. So you have that whole kind
Mhm.
of, I mean, it's, non-consensual, but you have that whole
Right.
seductive element. And then this is where you have that whole sexual element being introduced to vampires and vampirism. and it comes from this, you know. So I also agree with Alicia that the Van Helsing character should have gotten more screen time, and Edward Van Sloan, the actor here, he goes on to be the guy who's always the smartest man in the room, sort of thing, in a bunch of these movies, you know. So to think, you know, Van Helsing is Batman to Dracula's Joker, so to speak, and we just don't get that much of him here. So in rewatching it, I agree with you guys. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't hold up the way I remember it. But I can still appreciate all of those aspects and all of those things that have gone on to become representative of what a vampire is supposed to be. So 7 out of 10 for me.
All right, nice. Moving on now. Let me get into some sci-fi. Let's talk about Frankenstein.
Yes.
And just well, okay. So a
Woo-hoo!
couple things, right? One, I'm gonna lead in from here to Bride of Frankenstein, and I'll tell you guys why. Reason being is that I feel that both films work together. Like I feel like to
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate one, you have to see the other, right? So let's get it out of the way now. I love Frankenstein, but only because okay, so there's things about the movie that I genuinely appreciate and all that stuff, right? But I think because Bride of Frankenstein exists and works so well, it kind of makes the first film better. So it's kind of like the Godfather 1 and 2 of these Universal movies. It just work harmoniously though, and it's just so amazing, right? So we just kick off with Frankenstein and then we'll jump into Bride, right? So I
Right.
love the opening disclaimer, especially when the guy says, "We warned you."
Yes.
Like I
Yeah.
forgot that even
Yes.
happened though. I've always found it hilarious how Boris Karloff's name, i.e. the actor who plays the monster, right, is
Mhm.
revealed in the credits. It's just this question mark.
Yes.
Oh
I
yeah.
just love at
Like
the time
monster
they're just like,
question.
well, who's the guy who played the monster? Well, I don't know.
Well, I feel like part
I
of
don't
it's
know where he
also
came from.
part of it also ties into this because this is before. What I love about watching pre-code movies is that it's clear that this is before they're legally obligated to credit every single person in the production.
Yeah.
And so they can do little fun things like there's a monster, but we're not going to tell you who the actor is because you know that there are going to be a couple audience members who will see that makeup because this is the 30s and will like objectively they'll know that they're looking at an actor wearing makeup, but the fact that like it's that good because older horror films were definitely coming out of like sideshow attractions and theater. There's kind of a metatextual playing with the fact that the audience may not like the audience knows it's like a magic show, right? Like the audience objectively knows that there is an actor in a monster suit, but if you can like mess with that knowledge even a little bit, you're going to make the movie a little bit more effective. So I feel like that is a big part of the reason why, at least in this first film, they don't credit Boris Karloff as a monster because it just plays with the audience a little bit like, wait, there's a monster, but there's no credited actor. Is this like a real monster, or is this like that kind of thing? Even if it's more like a magic show kind of way,
Yeah, totally agree.
which I love.
Yeah. So just run through quickly why this film stands out, right? And just to get, we can make the argument that yes, Bride of Frankenstein is better, right? It is a better film, right? But it
I
works in such a way that it kind of makes the first film even better because once again, they work so well with each other. And I'll explain what I mean. Because they share so much, they have attributes about them that carry across well into the second film and back and forth, right? So one thing, so just right off the bat, why I love this film is that it works basically. It feels like a sci-fi fairy tale, basically, right? Like something that you just tell young kids who want to be scientists. It's cool. I mean, science is cool, but just don't try to play God, right? And this is why, and you tell the story, right? Um, it is very progressive though in terms of its themes, and it has both sci-fi and philosophical themes of reincarnation, man wanted to be God, man versus God, the essence of evil, because there's a little subplot involving the use of a criminal's brain, and well, it's kind of left for you to wonder if that's the reason why the monster acts the way he does, right? So all these things, you know what I mean? What is the core of evil, basically, right? Man becoming a monster, you know what I mean? Just the monster himself being the prototype of other human slash monster characters, like, see, the Incredible Hulk. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, like, even when I was watching, it's like, oh,
Yes,
this is
I was
clearly where the
thinking as
Hulk came
well.
from.
Yeah,
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
easily.
Yeah, and it's even more they emphasize that even more with Bride of Frankenstein, where by the way he talks, right? So when you hear, you know what I mean, food good, it's easy. Like when you hear Hulk smash, you know what I mean, that sort of basic child like dialogue now. Victor Frankenstein himself, well, the Doctor himself, so iconic as well. I mean, yes, you have your cheesy moments, you have the iconic "it's alive" moments, right? But props to Colin Clive though.
Known as Henry here, Henry Frankenstein.
Henry Frankenstein. My bad,
Henry,
my
Henry,
bad,
yeah.
my
die.
bad. Henry Frankenstein, right?
Yeah,
Shout out to Colin Clive, right? Rest in peace, right?
absolute.
Yeah. As over the
Yeah.
top and
Yes.
theatrical as his character is, even in the second film, it works though because you kind of need to be like that, and you have to buy in the fact that people call him mad, but I just more see him as, what, look, I am on the cusp of something here, and you don't understand it. No, I'm just gonna push myself even further. I have this guy by the name of Ego. He's gonna help me out here because he kind of sees my vision, right? And I'm just gonna go straight in. So, in a way, you kind of admire him, you pity him, you kind of, you kind of have to admire and pity him at the same time too, right? But yeah, the set designs, I mean, they are truly iconic. I mean, like if you're a true film buff, you deep down inside you kind of want to visit those sets. You know what I mean? See where all those big test tubes and all these electrical stuff and all those things, right?
Mhm.
Um, the monster himself. I mean, how he was portrayed excellently by Boris Karloff. I mean, I forgot about the moment with him and the little Gil Maria. I mean, such a powerful moment. And
Yeah.
even powerful moment afterwards, when the father finds her dead and carries her through the town where this festivity is taking place. I mean, there's just so much great moments in this. So if I
Mhm.
have one little gripe though with the movie is the end. That whole, oh, here's a shot showing that Henry's alive and well, and that's the end. Yay.
Oh gosh, yes.
But but
Yeah.
but because the second film follows right after that, or I should say a few moments before that little scene there, I could just let that slide. But other than though, Frankenstein, love this film. Not as much as the next film we're going to talk about, but written wise, here I could actually give the 4.5 out of 5 for sure, right? It'll be a light one in this case here. Yeah, totally love this film. CC, any thoughts on Frankenstein itself?
So this is definitely one of my of the original. This is like one of my top three of the Frankenstein of the original Universal films. Again, kind of what you're talking about. This is very much like it's a movie that operates under fairy tale logic. And again, I love I mean, the book it's based on. I like better because it is the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is so delightfully complicated and holds up so well. The movie, similar to Dracula, trims and simplifies the book and creates what you very rightly described as like kind of a fairy tale, right? Like it's like a sci-fi horror fairy tale that operates under that kind of logic, and so it tells most of its story through the performances and the visuals. And I think it helps that because this is early cinema, that means that it's very theatrical. Like this is like
Yes, yes, yes.
we talk about things like we talk about something like we throw around words like cheesy, but what we're talking about is a certain theatricality that is just no
Yeah.
longer the norm, right? Like at the time, this is like we're coming right out of the theater tradition, so we're performing for the people at the very back of the audience. So a certain amount of theatricality and a certain larger than lifeness to the performances is called for and demanded. And because of that, the movie is crystal clear. Like I feel like this is one of those movies. Like it's a movie you could play silent and understand exactly what's going on, even if you can't hear what the characters are saying, because of the production design and the theatricality of it, and how loud and clear it plays. The image some of that imagery is absolutely like just stays in your head rent free. Absolutely, like Frankenstein and Igor going into the cemetery after the funeral to dig up bodies.
Yes.
That the image of the Frankenstein monster trying like chained up in the cell, trying to reach to the one source of light, like the scene when he first comes through. Obviously, the scene when he is when he is first brought to life. Like there are so many great. The monster. I think the thing that like transcends everything else I'm talking about and grounds the film so well is the writing and performance of the Frankenstein monster, like Boris Karloff's performance.
Yeah.
Because the writers, unlike Shelley's novel, the film you could interpret whether or not the monster is whether the monster inherited evil because of the brain of this criminal, or whether the monster is the way he is, mistreatment from Igor and Frankenstein and like all this other stuff. Like it's really up for interpretation. It's something that makes for good discussion with people watching the movie. But I feel like Karloff plays the monster so well with a certain in Frankenstein. I'm talking all this with Frankenstein. I have separate thoughts on the Bride of Frankenstein, but like Karloff plays the monster with such sensitivity and such insight, right? That there are so many moments where like the monster will do something hideous, but then you'll realize there's kind of a weird childlike not understanding going on. Like the best example of that is the little girl and the flowers.
Yes.
Like like all the monster seems to figure out is pretty things float, and then throws the little girl in, and like, why'd that happen? Like, and it's that kind of like there's a horror in that innocence that is something that makes the film quite interesting and quite resonant. It's quite like I makes it one of my favorites of the bunch. So this one is a 9 out of 10 for me. This one is like this one's one of my favorites.
Nice. Julien, thoughts on Frankenstein?
I think you guys covered most of what I would have wanted to say. I love this movie because I mean, Summer is the horror girl. I am the sci-fi person. So, so I love this sci-fi horror story. I love the performances. I love how, as Cece was saying, it's it's very kind of direct, and it's so kind of trimmed down and almost so primal a movie,
Right.
and yeah, I love the performances. I love the iconic imagery of it, and of the films, these 7 films, this film is very dark. And rewatching it, I was like, wow.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is. It is.
I'm watching it now. I'm thinking, I'm like, even back then, some of these scenes, I was like, how did they let this film, get made? But yeah, it is really a masterpiece of horror and science fiction. I love it. I agree with CC. 9 out of 10 as well too.
All right, Summer, thoughts on Frankenstein?
For me, it's just how, even if you have never seen this movie, there's so much iconic, the lines in this movie, the line deliveries. I mean, that whole it's alive, it sticks with you. And it just sets the tone for exactly what the human element is like in this. And then you have Karloff's performance giving you that whole, well, who really is the monster here element of it? And that monster design, I mean, so iconic. It's something that they've tried to, as Sissy was saying, when they try to move away from it, they almost destroy everything that you associate with Frankenstein. So Universal has actually copyrighted the look of this creature, so I understand it. But it's all in how dark it is. It's all in the you sit there. I think if you watch this as a child, all you really see is this big lumbering monster. Because they do play the Victor Frankenstein, sorry, Henry Frankenstein's role as somewhat of a hero in this. He has this whole change of heart thing, and you're supposed to be on his side, I guess. But I'm so glad, you could watch this as an adult, and there's so much, as Cici said, there's so much to break down in terms of how innocent and yet monstrous this creature is. You take all that power and all that strength, and then you have a mind of a child who is basically a couple days old. So There's not much else to say here, guys. I do love this movie a lot. It is number 5 out of the 7 for me, but
Hmm.
but at the same time, it does hold up better, I think, than a film like Dracula did. So it's an 8 out of 10 for me.
All right, Alice, thoughts on Frankenstein?
Frankenstein never really was one of my favorites, but I could enjoy it for what it is. The material, being ahead of its time, venturing into the science fiction genre. Um, Colin Clive's brilliant acting. I mean, his that line alone, it's alive, has been mimicked in a lot of other pop culture and so on, and even in cartoons. Um, up to now, I don't understand where they got the green color from Frankenstein. Though I was trying to research it while I was
The,
doing an
yeah, he
article.
was green, you know. It was green. It falls back into the whole Hulk thing as well too, where
Right,
Right,
right.
it's
right,
just that the color couldn't show up in a
right.
black and white film, so it comes across
Obviously,
as
right,
gray and black, but it's
right.
supposed to be green.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. James Whale does such a incredible job with this film.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, yeah, and he actually returns to direct Bride of Frankenstein. Um, I agree with CC in that it is stripped down a lot from Mary Shelley's book because the Frankenstein monster in Mary Shelley's book is actually very articulate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't just grunt and do hand signals and stuff like that. You know, he actually has his own narrative part in the book. Um, another thing too. The the thing that for me that irks me the wrong way was the ending
Hmm.
because it
Yeah.
felt like the studios just copped out and be like, okay, we don't want to kill Henry Frankenstein because he actually tried to change his ways. He understood the error of his ways and tried to destroy the monster and so on. But I really felt like it was a cop out by the studios to just tack on this weird ending, and they showed his father getting drunk on this thing of wine and celebrating. And I think it was hinted that maybe the wife was pregnant or something. I really wasn't too sure. It was because of something that he said about we'll toast to the future Frankenstein or something like. I don't know if everybody remember that line.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the pet peeves in the movie for me. That tacked on ending. In terms of set design, it was very brilliantly done with all the machines and I admired the time and the care that went into that scene where he invites his fiance and the doctor and I don't remember who the other guy was. I think he just looked like a hanger-on because he looked like he had something for Frankenstein's fiance. But that scene where he puts them to sit down and then he just gets busy with Fritz, the humpback, his assistant, and you see all the cranking of the machinery. That scene takes up a very long time in the film, and it's very intense because they're like, "Oh my God, what's gonna happen here?" From somebody who has not ever seen that before, you know. And then also the reveal of the monster. They took their time with that as well too. It wasn't just, "Oh, it's alive," and you get to see the monster. So it's just that for me, the story is a bit of a tragedy, if for want of a better word, because here is this thing that's created. He's turned into a mindless monster because, like you guys said, he's given a brain that's not normal, and his own creator was treating him with like he's a rejected thing. You know, he just chains him up in his cellar like, okay, you didn't work out. You're causing too much problems to me. Let me just chain you up down there until I figure out what to do with you. And I mean to say, the torturing of the monster, like when I felt sorry for him, especially when Fritz was torturing him,
Oh yeah.
because it's
Yeah,
like
me too, me
okay,
too.
yeah, because okay, the monster clearly has a phobia of fire, and he's just purposely putting the torch in the monster's face. It's like I'm sorry for sounding kind of morbid. I really think he got what he deserved in the end.
He did.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, you deserve that. I honestly thought that when I saw the last confrontation between the doctor and the monster at the top of the windmill, I thought that the way that he he picked up Dr. Frankenstein and threw him over the side, and he actually landed on one of the
One
I
of
don't know
the
what you call it. Is it a
yeah,
pane? One of the blades
one
of the
yeah.
windmill. I said, well, he's broken in half.
Yeah,
So I'm
but
like,
He's not
he's
walking that
not.
off.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's dead again. That's why the ending makes no sense.
It's but a
You see, the
scratch.
continuity, it just doesn't make sense. That dude is dead. you know, he doesn't even land on the ground or land in like some hay or something. He lands on one of the propellers, and it's like, yeah, nobody could survive that. I'm sorry.
It's but a scratch.
yeah,
that's
it's
quite graphic when you think about it,
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it
oh,
is. It is pretty graphic, and that's what makes this story like Summer was saying so dark. Any child looking at that would be scared out of their mind.
Oh yeah.
They would be scared out of their mind. But I don't know if it's just me, but I just never really liked the whole Frankenstein story because I, I I don't know. I just thought it grossed me out, for want of a better word, because I've read the book, I've watched the movies, I've watched this one. I saw the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which the monster was acted by Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I saw
That's the
that one.
Kenneth Branagh, yeah, one movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw
um,
that one. And I saw the one with where James McAvoy was acting as Dr. Frankenstein.
huh.
I think that's the one that was directed by Kenneth Branagh. The one that Cece said was weird, and I agree with him.
The Kenneth Branagh one is the one with is
Ro-
the one
Ro-
with De Niro.
yeah, with the De Niro. That's the Kenneth Branagh
That's the
one.
Kenneth Branagh one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know who directed the other one. I only watched that film, to be honest with you guys, because James McAvoy was in it.
James
Yeah, that
McAvoy,
was the only reason.
Radcliffe in Frankenstein.
oh yeah, you know, as you brought up James McAvoy and the later Frankenstein movies.
Yes.
Anybody remember I Frankenstein?
Oh yeah, I try not
Oh,
to.
we tried to
I
forget.
also try.
Yeah.
Me too. I skipped that show. As I saw the title, I was like, nope, no, no. Even
No.
if they
Yeah.
explain why it's called that, it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
I'm
We
good.
like to pretend that one didn't happen.
Yeah.
From the
Yeah.
director of Underworld, another retelling of Frankenstein, but not for some reason.
Yeah.
And
Like
he's sexy now.
what was the
Yeah.
pitch for that movie?
We're gonna call it I Frankenstein.
No, guys. No, guys. We're gonna have Frankenstein,
Okay,
but
yeah.
sexy. That was the
Yeah,
entire pitch.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was it.
what?
Shoot
And
lessons.
was it like? It was like
Yeah, that's I don't know. That was just all kinds of stupid.
One
Well,
thing
I
I
give.
one thing
mean
I will say that
or
besides the
something.
Frankenstein movie is that the
Mhm.
Penny Dreadful the season one of Penny Dreadful, that has to be one of the best and I think closest to the book adaptations
Mm,
of the
Yeah,
character
Yes, you are
himself.
very right.
agreed.
I forgot
Yeah,
about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Penny Dreadful
yeah.
version. Yes.
Yeah, just of the character himself and the way, and in that one, I think you get to see a much more cold-hearted Victor Frankenstein. You see
mm.
how
Yes.
he just discards his creation because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't suit what he wanted, the perfection that he was seeking. And
Trying to create.
I
Yes.
absolutely love that. I absolutely love how that entire thing was handled in Penny Dreadful.
I need to. I
Mm-hmm.
need to. I need to see that. Not you sold me on this now. I need to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the book, and none of the adaptations have really like Branagh's gets the closest question mark, but even then, like if you ever want to know, for those of you who have not seen it, if you ever want to know how wild off course Branagh goes, on the one hand, for his lab features fun fact, the equipment that because Universal was behind the film, they were actually able to use the equipment from the 1930s film in the
Mm-hmm.
Branagh movie. It's there in the
Okay.
back.
Right.
It's there in the background
Right.
of all the other stuff. But it's so on the one hand there's that, but on the other hand, the Kenneth Branagh version of It's Alive is a shirtless Victor Frankenstein straddled on top of the tank full of amniotic fluid containing the monster, screaming, "Live!" while he smacks it repeatedly, and eagles are alive.
That's so true.
Like, if you ever want to know what kind of movie this is, this is it. This is
Yeah. I mean, it's the 90s, but still, I mean, dial it back there.
it's Kenneth Branagh.
But I definitely I think you should definitely check out that Penny Dreadful season 1. The Frankenstein aspect of
Yeah.
it, the way the creature is played by John Clare, is
Yeah.
just amazing. I think you would enjoy it.
I'm excited. And then also, shout out to the Hammer version Curse of Frankenstein for what I think is probably one of the most, because I feel like Hammer's approach to doing Frankenstein was, okay, we're going to focus more on the horror of Frankenstein himself instead of the monster. Like, the monster is creepy, but if you watch Curse of Frankenstein, so much more time is given to the process of, like, Victor Frankenstein creating this monster and kind of him losing his humanity as he goes along with this process, and he's doing more and more despicable, desperate things as he's working towards this, like, what is basically his magnum opus, but, like, he's kind of losing sight of the fact that he's doing something kind of, like, really, really messed up. Like to the point where, like, the monster finally is revealed. And I feel like the monster from Curse of Frankenstein is probably one of the ugliest monster designs. Like, it is deliberately asymmetrical, rough, patchy, very like 60s British gore type. Like, it is deliberately one of the least aesthetically pleasing of any of the Frankenstein monsters. And Victor's looking at it like, "Look at what I have done," and his assistant's like, "You're kidding, right? Like, are we?"
Like, you're kidding, right?
No.
Well, I gave this Frankenstein a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
It's actually going into the United States Film Registry for preservation.
Bravo.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It's been immortal.
yeah.
Truly. 14 years. This one is 14 years away from being 100 years old.
Yes.
Oh, wait,
All right.
Yeah,
So let me picking up the pace here. Let me jump into Bride of Frankenstein. I actually wrote the most notes for this, so I'll just run through them quickly. Points for the opening text. Forgive me for butchering the surname, right? Carl Lamel presents Karloff. Like, he is such an established actor right now. He's an icon right now. You don't even need a maiden name. It's just I'm Karloff now. I'm a sick. I can go on stage and introducing Karloff, right? That's where he reached, right? Over the course of what, 4 years?
Yeah. It's 1935.
Yeah.
The actor formerly known as Boris, now.
Yeah, formerly known as, right? In Bride of Frankenstein, and the monsters meets ? Right? Even in the very end, they don't even show who it is, right? So me having not seen this film for ages was blown out of my mind when I realized that the actress who played the actual bride was the lady who played Mary Shelley herself, who I actually forgot was in this movie, right? This would be Elsa Lanchester, right? Probably such an iconic performance. I mean, it's timeless, right? Especially the hair, like, that hair, like, jeez, right? It's hot, but like 30s hot is like, damn, that's like real hot too. But anyway, right? And I love how they use her to pretty much continue the story of the first film, because she's like talking to some of her, I think it's her brothers, and we have Lord Byron, who's just like
her husband and Lord Byron.
Oh, okay, her husband and Lord Byron. Okay, I was confused.
No, her lovers, yeah.
All right, yeah, okay. And it's how that guy was just ruling his R's by like so deliberate. But anyway, right? But I love just basically how they just give us a montage of what happened in the first movie, and then they jump right at the moment where the windmill is ablaze, right?
Yeah.
And well, yes, they follow up on pretty much everything involving you see the Maria's dad who shows up and all these different things, right? But what really surprised me here, though, like, I would just to get this out of the way, though. Yes, this is easily one of the best sequels ever made. It did everything that a sequel should do, right? It took creative risk. It explored certain lanes and avenues. It was actually kind of like weird and bizarre in some parts, but intentional. They had, intentional humor in it as well too. So it kind of reminded me of, just forgive me for the comparison. Evil Dead 2, you know what I mean? Where it's just, okay, we're just gonna go bigger and more large on life than this one, but we're gonna take everything that we established in the first film, but just amp it up by five, right? So love the character of Dr. Pretorius, right? One of the greatest lines
Yeah.
ever to a new world of gods and monsters. I was like, word. I forgot this came from the movie though. And his idea, like just for the word go it, he shows you little miniature humans that he creates and basically what he wants to do and why he wants to create the bride, right? Why he wants to make a meat for the monster, makes sense and how he ropes in, Henry again, even though he's
Yeah.
kind of like done with it and he wants to just, settle with his wife, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, here though, this really felt like bigger is better. I mean, the scope is more grand, it's more epic. There's an actual musical score. You know what I mean? There's a powerful sequence involving the monster encountering this old blind man. I really really love that, and it just brings up this overarching theme of well, okay. So what I love about the movie, right? So yes, if you do your research, it is obvious. I mean, it's part of like it's knowledgeable now in terms of film culture. That yes, this movie does have undertones, right? You know what I mean? Especially with the director James Whale, being gay and how he was able to incorporate that into the plot
Yes.
itself, right? What I loved about the movie is that if you could look at that and just be like, all right, well, that's what it is. But to me, I just see it as way deeper. I just see it as can someone like the monster, can someone who literally killed a child, quote unquote, by accident and is perceived as a monster, is he capable of love? Or sorry, should someone be there to actually love him or be a companion to him, right? And
Right.
that's like just such a powerful theme right there. I mean, something that resonates with me, right? Personally. So just how the blind man reaches out to him, gives him food, teaches him not to be afraid of fire. There's an excellent shot of him smoking a cigar, and I have a feeling
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that shot
Oh
is like
yeah.
part of 420 stoner
Good.
culture. Smoke, good, good. And
Why?
yes, the dialogue in
Good.
this case is very, you could tell it inspired, the Incredible Hulk, I mean, that whole
Yeah.
Hulk smash, that kind of thing. Like it works, right? I love there's a moment where he confronts Henry for the first time and he tells him to sit down, you know what I mean? And that's like a mirror to like what happened in the first film where, Henry was forcing the monster to sit down. So I love that, right? It's just all these allusions to the first film and back and forth. So that's why I say even though the first one is perfect, this one complements it very well. And then of course, well, the character that we all waited for, the Bride of Frankenstein. Yes, we could make the argument that she's hardly in the movie. She's only there for like 5 minutes, but I think it's just the idea of a bride, like the idea that a creature like this can actually have a mate, you know what I mean, a companion. I think that's the point of the title. And something with these Universal movies, they'll always give you a title and tell you this character meets this character, but then it's only like near the end, like in the last 5 minutes, that they actually do meet the character. You're like, okay, well, this is kind of misleading, right? But in this case, I think it works so because it just drives the whole theme of are we, is there someone for all of us, right, in this world? And it's just those teams that just resonated with me. So overall, everything was pretty much amped up. They tried new things. They were a little weird at times, a little funny at times, very profound at times, and even the way how it ends, I thought that the ending was brilliant in my opinion. With the monster basically sacrifices his life, and it's just so tragic too because just like
Yeah.
Leave
the
long dead.
monster's mate doesn't like me and he doesn't like me, so well at least you have someone, Henry. Go with her. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was just deep for me, man. And last thing I just want to say before I get to return though, I recommend if you get a chance to look for this video on YouTube. This would be the queer tragedy of Bride of Frankenstein. This basically uses queer theory to examine the themes, you know what I mean, that resonated in this movie. But yeah, for
Okay.
me though, this is a strong 4.5 out of 5. this to me is the template of what a sequel is and what a sequel should be. Taking what the first film established and just exploring the themes in these really profound and, distinct, unique, thought-provoking ways. So yeah, I mean, and this movie came out in 1935, and look at what it was able to do, Jordan. I mean, that's just mind-blowing to me, man. CC, any thoughts on Bride of Frankenstein?
So I might be in the minority here, but I'm not the biggest fan of The Bride of Frankenstein. Like
Okay,
and,
well,
and mainly, and like I understand, like everything that you have said, I objectively recognize, and I feel like my dislike is more. It's not even dislike. I gave like for me this movie is a 7, which is kind of like I watch it and like I don't dislike it, and I will like it's quite good, but it doesn't do quite as much for me personally as either Frankenstein or Dracula, and I feel like the main reason for that is for me, while it does feel like the Terminator 2 to the first Terminator, to like the first, like this movie is to Frankenstein what Terminator 2 is to the first Terminator. But
yeah.
the only thing is, I mean, yeah, where like the scope is bigger, there's more characters, like we're expanding on things. I just feel like there's a bit of a thing where it's taking on a lot. Like it's only an
Yes.
hour. It's only an hour and 10 minutes, but there's a lot more going on, and also like
True.
there's a lot more, and like the tone is a little like the first film is very simple, slick, lean, minimalistic, and like the way it's going in the way it goes about telling it's very focused. Bride of Frankenstein does not have that same focus. It wanders in places. Some of the, I mean, everything, it all comes back together at the end, and the ending, like the last act in particular, is absolute gold. But some of the setup to get there is a little bit all over the place, and some of it is a little bit, it's a little bit messier in places than the first film, which is such a tight, well executed movie. Although things I do like, because I refuse to be a negative film person, but things I do like, you said that the Bride, we like, people watching the movie are like always surprised that like the Bride is not in for that much time. I would say that the reason we all think of the Bride as in the movie more than she is because of how much of an impression she leaves. Like
Yeah.
that is like,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
That is true.
performance of the Bride is really great. Like, I
yeah.
love
Just the facial features alone, I
like
just love though. That kind of what?
Yeah.
like
I
Yes,
love
what
that.
I totally agree with you now.
Right. What I love is that like the Frankenstein monster is this big, lumbering, slow, kind of a little not dull, but a little slow to respond. So the word is slow. What I
Mhm.
what I like about the Bride is that the Bride is this jittery, hyperactive, and reactive creature. Like it's a very like the Bride is very like the bride the bride comes to life and immediately does this like almost like not like a dog or a squirrel, like looking around it with these very
Well,
sharp
Elsa
quick
Lanchester said she actually modeled her movements against a swan. So
Yeah,
you
that's what
have
I'm
Oh,
gonna say.
okay.
That's after a bird. Yeah.
like movements where it
yes
almost feels like you've tried to trap a wild bird,
yes
and it's afraid. So that's the kind of movements that you're getting there. Plus the fact that she could barely move in all that wrapping. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
right, and it's a
there's a
very
lot of head movements there, a lot of Michael Keaton, Batman type head movements, things going on there.
yeah no and it leaves you with a performance that like and it's such a good performance, it leaves an impression long after. Like the reason I have any fondness for this film at all is because of the Bride and that last act, and the Bride is what
Yep.
holds the last act together. I
Yep.
also love Dr. Pretorius as a character, like as much as I feel like his whole bit where he trots out his miniaturized people in bottles. I'm just sitting here, the the writer in me is sitting here going, there is no, like, you kind of are justifying this, but also this, you could have cut or trimmed this entire sequence down, and it adds very little. But that being
True.
said, Pretorius himself is a very kind of one of those delightfully evil characters. Like he's
Yeah.
such a
Yeah. Yeah.
he's such a lovable scumbag. Like literally the scene when the monster first meets him and he's hanging out in this crypt or whatever with
Yeah.
this skull and pouring himself some wine, and then the monster wanders in. He's like, "Oh, I thought I was alone.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that
Yeah.
line. Yeah.
Good evening." Like that whole bit, I'm like, I love this bastard. Like just like I. So yeah, it's a messier film than the first one, and I feel like that's why it detracts for me, and so I end up giving it kind of a 7 out of 10. Like it's a like got some serious problems. Not one of my favorites of the Universal films that I've seen. I'm sure once I start watching sequels to the originals, this will probably get bumped up quite a bit. But like for the time being, it's not one of my favorites, and I do give it like a 7 out of 10.
Okay. Summer, your thoughts on Bride of Frankenstein?
Well, my thoughts kind of lined up with what Cece has to say. For me, well, out of the 7 films, this one is number 7 for me.
Okay.
So, as
Ooh.
yeah, now as a sequel to Frankenstein, it's strong. It does
Yes.
deliver in that way. But the Bride of Frankenstein aspect of it feels very misleading, and I think that's where, if you've never seen this before, it brought me right back to that Godzilla movie, 2014's Godzilla, where I'm sitting there
Oh
in the
Oh
cinema and
yeah,
God.
I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I'm
yeah.
like, where the hell is my Godzilla? God damn it! I've been here for like an hour. Where's Godzilla? So, and granted, when Godzilla does pop up, he's awesome. So it's the same feeling I get here, but she's there for like 3 minutes maybe. And it does, what Cece's saying there, it does resonate with me in the fact that she is so damn good in those 3 minutes that you tend to think she's in so much more of this movie than she is.
Yes.
Um, I do agree as well that it's a bit messy in terms of story. It's just there's a lot going on there, but I do appreciate the fact that they do show character development and growth, not just for the monster, but for Colin Clive's character as well.
Yes.
We do see a much more sympathetic Henry Frankenstein here, who has learned his lesson, so to speak. So I think in this one, whereas in the first one, that ending does not feel earned at all, this one you do feel like he's earned his chance at a happy ending. So I would give this a 6.5 out of 10.
All right. Julian, please tell me you're a fan.
Uh, I-
Are you a fan? Did you like it,
as
or am
as
I the only one?
as Frankenstein's monster was disappointed with the reaction of the bride, I'm sorry you're gonna have to be disappointed as well too.
Oh, Marky, not you.
Yeah,
Why am I the only one?
monster
It's more
alone.
fun this way. It's more fun this way.
Yeah, and I think CC touched on my major issue is I guess the tonal imbalance of the film, where they try to say, oh, let's do a little comedy in it as well too, which is personified into that annoying screaming woman
Oh
who just like
God.
runs up
Yeah.
and
Oh
down
yes,
and
the
Yes.
screams
Una
and
Egyptian one. Oh
O'Connor.
my god.
yes,
Una
and
O'Connor.
who comes back up Invisible Man, but we'll get to her when
Yeah.
we
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Invisible
yeah,
yeah,
she's
Man.
yeah.
back. She comes
Una
back.
O'Connor
Yeah.
does annoying
She's
so well.
fantastic.
She is
Bro,
so
does the
annoying.
scream.
Yeah. So me, yeah, I love the whole dark horror aspect of the first one, and they don't get as much. And while I appreciate the character development of Frankenstein, there's a bit of a demystifying of him as well too. It's like, I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I mean he's not as scary and as imposing as before. I did enjoy Pistorius with his crazy wacky self. The Bride, fantastic, wonderful final act. Yeah, but it really feels like this should have been like Frankenstein Returns or something, not Bride of Frankenstein, and it feels like almost like two movies kind of Frankensteined together. Yeah, so
I see what you
yeah,
did there.
yeah, so it's weird, As like yeah, I'm enjoying some things, but some other things it's like this does not even need to be in the movie. This is just you don't need filler in a movie that's an hour and 10 minutes. You really don't. And this
No.
movie has way too much filler. You know. So yeah, so I think it needed to be leaner, tighter, and more focused. But there are things really to enjoy in it. So I agree with Summer. 6.5 out of 10 for me.
All right, well, continue to break my heart, Alice. Tell me how wrong I am.
Well, I'm gonna be a little more gentle because I did have a conversation with Summer at my initial watching of it, because this was the first time I actually saw Bride of Frankenstein, to be honest. And
Um,
Okay.
I was very conflicted coming out of the first viewing. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this movie, and I was gonna give it, honestly, I was gonna give it a 5 out of 10. But I had a day where I sat and I thought about it, and I had more analysis in my thought. So I ended up upping it to 6 out of 10, which is the most you're gonna get from out of me. Sorry, but so I'm sorry to
All
break
good
your
though.
heart,
It's all
Matt,
good.
on that. But I
my
have my reasons to it. As with everybody else, I do agree the title is highly misleading, and it is due to the fact that when the bride is finally on screen, she's so awesome in her performance. It's like, but I wanted to see more of her because the actress does such a great job with how she reacts to seeing her new environment and the horrified look that she has on her face. The irony is that you created from something dead too, But when she looks at the Frankenstein monster, the original creation, she's horrified, like, oh my god, and she doesn't even want him to touch her. She's like shrieking to get away from him because she's so horrified. And in that,
That's
I don't know
racist.
if anybody observed in that split. I don't know if anybody observed, but just in that split, like one little moment, there was a look on her face when she tried to get away from the monster, but she's not able to walk properly. So Henry is all but kind of dragging her from under her
Right.
arms, but there is a moment where she looks at him, she catches his eyes, and the expression on the bride's face, her look softens a lot when she looks at Henry's face. It's almost
mm,
like,
True. Yeah, I saw that
wow.
too.
Oh, okay,
I
Yeah,
okay.
saw
there
that
was
too. She
there was a
was drawn to
moment.
him more than to.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
there was a
You
moment.
guys ever saw the Bride of Frankenstein, starring Jennifer? What's her name?
Feel?
Yeah, Jennifer Beal. And I
Oh,
Yeah,
the
think
bride, is it? Is that's what it's called, right? The bride.
it's called The Bride.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a terrible movie, but
That's
it
the one
Well,
with
thank
Sting?
you for letting me know.
it does, yeah, with Sting, but it does
Right.
play on
I
the
saw it.
whole. The bride is she falls in love with Victor as opposed to the monster.
Right. Right. But I thought that that scene was so brilliantly done, in that just for that moment, if you're looking at the screen at just the right time, you're gonna see that slight change in her face where it softens, and you could see that she is enamored with Henry in that frame. So that's why I was so disappointed in that she didn't get so much screen time. And while I could appreciate the development of the Frankenstein monster in itself, like Julian said, you took away some of the, not magic, but some of the darkness of the monster itself and some of the mystery behind him. You're breaking it down because you want the audience to begin to have sympathy for the character. You want to see that, like a child, if you teach a child this is right, this is wrong, this is good, or this is bad. And that is what they wanted to do, to develop the character a bit more in terms to let the audience feel sorry for him. And that it worked out well in terms of the last epic scene, as in what CC said in that epic scene where he was like, okay, you know what, you found your happiness, you go, I will sacrifice myself, I'm a monster, Pretorius is a monster. All of us going now. So that self-sacrifice, that's what made it kind of epic in the end, because by this time you took the time to develop the audience's feelings and sympathies for the monster and so on. But in between, yeah, there is a lot of mess. There's a lot of plot holes. Um, yeah, there shouldn't be filler in a movie that's just a little over an hour. And I know you guys find that the lady was kind of annoying, but I kind of liked her. she was she was just
Uh,
amusing. She
yeah,
was
she
just a
she she
barrel of
did have me
laughs.
laughing at some point, so I won't lie.
Yeah, yeah. But it's all in all, the thing about it, what I didn't mention before, is that remember these movies are coming off not only from like they had like theaters before there was even cinema, right? So you have live performances. But before these movies, the talking movies, we also had the silent film era where it was always a lot of, looking like gasping and a lot of hand gestures and the eyes opening, and a lot of it was about facial expressions. And I think at this point, a lot of the overacting that they did was, I think the film industry is still trying to learn how to kind of tone it down a bit from being in having to talk so loud and stuff like that, because we don't do that now in cinema. The actors don't talk over the top and stuff like that. And I don't know, I didn't hear anybody mention, but um the Van Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman.
Oh God.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, which at
Nobody
a
mentioned that,
time I
yeah.
kind of liked, but then nobody is like,
Yeah.
nah, that don't hold up at all.
Like,
Yeah,
It's
it does.
too over the top though. It's too much.
well,
Like,
okay, no. My problem, like that movie, it feels like someone at Hollywood decided to do Vampire Hunter D, but then Vampire Hunter D versus the Universal monsters. But oh wait, let's take any of what made like the anime or the novels of Vampire Hunter D interesting. Let's just have him have a cool hat
Yeah.
and be sexy. Like, come on, it's.
But it's good cheese. It's good cheese in my
It,
book,
yeah, if you had nothing to do on a Saturday night, you could watch that.
Yeah.
That's how I
But
read.
but I just wanted to mention the overacting and stuff like that is actually what I think inspired those actors too, because I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who acts as Dracula,
oh
maybe
God.
someone might know his name, is very dramatic in his acting, and the one who
Oh
plays
yeah,
Frankenstein.
yeah, the Frankenstein. Well, the monster in particular. Yeah, you're right.
Yes,
So yeah,
yes,
that guy playing Dracula is at like an 11 the whole movie.
Yes,
yeah, yes.
yes.
I just thought I should mention it because I didn't hear anybody else mention it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, sorry, Martha. I give it a 6 out of 10, and yeah, it's on my lowest list as well too.
Look, yo. The movie have layers to it, right?
I
Have
know it's like an
layers
onion,
to it.
right?
I
this movie
it's the layers of it.
this movie is like ogres. It has layers.
You know that?
All right, I think the reason why I appreciate this so much is because I watched them back to back. I think, honestly, they work better when you see them as a double feature. I highly recommend you all check it out. You all might probably fall asleep near the end of the second film, but I just think because they work so well together, you kind of have to see them kind of like one film, you know what I mean? But
Like,
it got
right.
layers
Yeah.
to it, man.
You sound so dejected.
Like, come on, if we all agreed this would be a very boring episode, just like, oh, we like this movie. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I like this movie too. Yeah, well, yeah, what the heck? Like, it's so much more fun this way.
Oh, good. Anyway. All right, so now we move to, and y'all might get mad at me for this. Well, I should say my second to last. Well, if we talk about ranking them from 1 to 7, because the 7 films, I'd actually have this at number 6. This would be the Mummy.
We're gonna fight.
Wow.
Okay, we're gonna fight.
I know,
Yep,
We're
we're
I
gonna
know,
fight.
I know, I know. You'll
Threw
love
the
this film, right?
glove down.
Here's the thing. Here's what I like about it, right? I do appreciate the fact, well, with Boris Karloff playing Emotep, I like
Oh,
the fact
yeah.
that they gave him a backstory, they gave him character, they gave him, a reason to do the things that he's doing, right? But at the end of the day, horror film, like, okay, this is me going in blind. This is me watching this for the first time, right? Of course, we've seen the 1999 film and the
Oh, yeah.
sequels, and the god awful remake with remake, if you want to call it that, reboot, sorry, with Tom Cruise and nobody asked for. But anyway, but I just kind of went in expecting the same kind of scares there. I really is just you know Egyptian guy who was killed somehow returns through magic or whatnot, and he's just looking for his bride, and that's pretty much it. You know, like I was just expecting more as far as scares go. Like the story itself is fine, but I just kind of came out of it like wanting or expecting more out of it. I just got this, and I was like, Well, all right. Well, that's it. Okay, it's fine. I mean, it's well shot. I will give it that. Well acted. I will give it that. But I just kind of came out of it. I don't know, just expecting something more to go with it, right? I mean, it's the Mummy, right? It's around the same time where Universal was just striking the iron hot with with the Frankenstein and the Dracula films. Now. So you kind of go in expecting something similar but different, but you kind of get different and not really anything much of what we got before. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. I didn't hate the film. I didn't really love it all that much. So if I were rate it, this is just off of my first viewing, mind you. Uh, 3 out of 5. It was alright for what it was, but I have a feeling that if I watch it again, or maybe if I hear what you guys have to say, because you all might probably put this on a high pedestal, high pedestal. Sorry, tell me how wrong I am. Maybe I'll appreciate it
Oh
more. But
yeah.
what it is, it's good. I mean, just not great. Julian, let me guess, you love the film now.
No, 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 Matt. I got your back. I got
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Oh, we're taking
What,
sides now. Okay.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is this
What? Bring it.
movie?
Bring it. Bring
What
it.
is this movie? We were talking about Bride of Frankenstein. Have a misleading title. This movie is even more misleading.
Yeah,
Where the hell is the mummy?
where's the
Where
mummy?
is where's the mummy? We see the guy wrapped up in bandages. We see the hand moving. We see the guy reacting to it. And then for the rest of the movie, we have desiccated Imhotep. You know,
Yeah,
I'm like,
with some creepy eyes. Well, or I
yeah,
should say his face as a whole is creepy, and you have a nice little close-up shot, like really iconic of his face.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Look, but other than that, it's like, well, like you say, where's the mummy, right? But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. And I actually realized I hadn't seen the mummy. I think I thought I saw it, but I was like, no, I've never seen this movie. And watching it back, I was like, okay. I was like, okay, at some point I'm gonna see a mummy kind of stalking people and killing people. I was like, no,
yeah,
no, there's no mummy
where's it?
stalking and there's none of that.
Where?
And yeah, so I get exasperated because this movie exasperated me. um, so I liked Boris Karloff. I liked the actress as well too, attractive lady. Some
Yeah,
nice
and you
set
can buy
design.
into her having Egyptian heritage or ancestry, if you want to call it that. You
Right.
can buy into it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the story is pretty kind of stripped down and pretty no frills. And I do like the production design for the flashbacks during the time of Egypt and so forth. So I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's well
those
made,
are
but
great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I didn't find this movie scary at all. And the ending,
Wow.
the ending is literally a Deus Ex Machina. I was like, no, she did not just pray to some Egyptian god and Egyptian. I was like, what is going
Yeah,
on here?
yeah.
Yes, I was like, this. I was like, yes. Afterwards, the movie was like, nah. The movie I had in my head was so much scarier and so much more
Thank
entertaining
you.
than this.
There were bugs in this movie, in that movie though. Like where were the bugs? I know. It's a dumb joke, guys. Just
I
saying, but
get it.
still.
Yeah. So yeah, so I appreciate the movie for what it is, but yeah, I'm sorry. This is I think this is 6 for me out of the 7. Yeah,
Uh,
actually no, I think the lowest. Yeah, five
Yeah.
5 out of 10. Sorry guys.
So Alice, please tell us how wrong we are.
Well, I've listened, I understand, yeah. But the thing about it is, what I think a lot of people forget is, unlike the movies like Dracula and Frankenstein, those were inspired and derived from novels. The Mummy, the Curse of the Mummy, all those things, those are modern inventions, guys. There's nothing. Archaeologists have gone through stuff and they have not found anything about any Egyptian mummy being reanimated or anything like that. So this is purely something written by screenwriters for cinema purposes. Um,
Okay.
the
Fair enough.
reason,
Fair enough. Mhm.
yeah, the reason why I liked this movie so much is because the opening sequence I find is incredibly creepy because you have the close-ups of like the people, the researchers, the archaeologists having their conversation, and you're seeing the mummy in the back, the creepy mummy in the tomb, and it's faded just enough But the thing is, the audience knows that that thing is gonna move at some point in time. So we're all waiting with bated breath to see when this thing is gonna move. And when he actually wakes up, when the scroll of thought is read, the I like this sequence because literally, guys, if we were to see something like that come to life, we would lose our minds,
Oh yeah.
realistically
Yeah,
speaking.
yeah.
If anybody was to see one of those things get up looking like that, we would probably need a change of underwear and be freaked out like that and end up in the nut house. So I thought I'd open it. I loved the opening sequence. The mummy for me, while it was creepy and scary at times, there was a bit of a love story going on there because Imhotep is actually trying to, how you say, bring back his the love of his life, who was the princess who suddenly dies. Um, but because he was, how you say, he stole the scroll, he was doing something that was sacrilegious, so that is how he was punished. He was buried alive in a tomb, right? So here comes the actress who has a very unusual face, very exotic looking. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, very very exotic looking for that era of Hollywood. I think she fits in perfectly, and on their first meeting, that scene is so wrought with sexual tension you would not believe
Oh
because
yeah.
yeah, because Boris Karloff is towering over this woman and the intensity with which they stare at each other and the silence they're not even saying anything yet, they're just staring at each other. It's like, wow, my goodness, I didn't even know that was possible to create back then in black and white with somebody that, no offense, looks like Boris Karloff. I mean, he's not, he's not the most attractive person, but it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was achieved, so that was one of the things that stood out to me. The one of the downfalls, yeah, the ending, yeah, it's a bit of a scramble in terms of yeah, she prays to this goddess and then magically Imhotep is disintegrated. So yeah, that is some of the patchiness of the plot itself. It kind of reminds me of a book that I read by Anne Rice, which is The Mummy, the same name.
Mm.
That is why I got more into the love story, the gothic love story side of it. For me, the other thing that was how to say it, that was a very strong part of the film is the power that the mummy has, Imhotep. So he's disguised in plain sight. Um, I don't know how people didn't realize that his skin looked like dried parchment, but
I know,
with some,
right?
yeah, with some makeup over it. But he's disguised in plain sight, right? And the fact that he could stand up from so far away and make somebody get a heart attack, and you
Yeah.
don't know, yeah, you don't know where he is. It's like, my goodness, this man, the how do you say, the doctor? I forgot his name, but the guy's dad, right?
Mhm.
He literally falls down, clutching his heart, and this man just acts like he's holding a heart and twisting it in his hand. I mean, that's creepy in itself. I'm trying to think about it in times of like looking at it in that timeline in cinema, not to what we know with all the special effects and the mummy that we saw with the sexy Imhotep Arnold Vosloo, not even the one that we saw with Tom Cruise. I'm thinking about it in the perspective of this is 1930 something, and I've
Yes.
never seen anything like this before. I would
Yes.
be freaked out of my mind to know that somebody could have that power and just stand
Mm.
up miles away and just crushes my heart in an instant or chokes me and takes somebody out of my house by just luring them because, okay, this person is a reincarnation. I don't know. To me, it was freaky enough, and that's why I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 because what was achieved with this movie back in the day, the tension, the sexual annotations. I don't know. I just thought it was brilliant. And there's even that same scene I forgot to mention where the actress meets the mummy for the first time, Imhotep. I thought her dress was extremely sexy for that era because in that era, scenes of movies have been banned for less. But the front of her
Wow.
dress, the way that it was draped, as well too, the movement when she got up from the settee and stood up in front of him, the movement of the dress as well too added to that entire scene. And I was
Right.
surprised by the type of dress that she was wearing. I was like, how did that pass the censorship board? What, you know?
All right.
I don't know. That's why I like the movie so much. It was like a gothic horror love story, a
Mm.
failed, a doomed love. That's why I thought the ending fell a little flat for me in terms of that.
Okay.
Hmm.
Summer. Quick thoughts on the
You
mummy.
are saving me for
Well,
last.
But of course I am, Cece. Of course.
so 7 movies on this list, and this one is my number two. This for me,
Okay.
yeah, this for me,
Uh-huh.
I think what we have here is, you have all these beautiful subgenres of horror, and this one for me is completely atmospheric horror. It's the kind of horror that it's not so much what you see, but what you don't see and what you feel and what you think is going on. And
Yeah.
Karloff does such a great job of messing with you in that way,
Yeah.
in the way he, as Alicia said, reaching out and killing people from a distance, and you don't know what's causing it.
Hmm.
The cinematography here and the direction by Carl Front is just so beautiful. From
Hmm.
like that opening very creepy scene, and there's always that sense of something really bad is coming,
Yeah.
so yeah, you don't get it in your face like the way Frankenstein does it or the way the Wolfman does it, but
Hmm.
it feels like, I can compare it to the witch when I think about it, as
Yeah.
just knowing that there's something dark and evil just lurking there all the time, and you're in the room with this man,
Hmm.
and the way Karloff portrays him is, you just know this is not, there's something very wrong with this person, besides the parchment face, I mean, like, people don't want to offend you by saying, dude, you need to moisturize and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
you're in the room with this guy, and you just get this feeling that there's something so wrong here. And I think what we
Yeah.
also have here, like Coppola's Dracula, where you have that connection between Mina and Dracula, that kind of
Hmm.
instant, I know you from somewhere. You
Yeah.
see that with Zita Johan's portrayal of the character, that instant. Why do I feel like there's something between us? Why do I feel like there's this connection to this
Hmm.
person that I don't know? So
Yeah.
all of that works for me in the sense of, this is a very different Universal horror movie. It's not like the
Yeah. Yeah.
others in that sense of, this is your monster, this
Hmm.
is your nightmare, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
It's more of you now. Let's say you're in a foreign country and these things are happening, and you're asking yourself, what, there must be a logical reason for what's
Hmm.
happening. I love that type of atmospheric horror that messes with you like that. And that opening scene, just the utter silence that exists in that scene,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the silence you would find in a tomb, so to speak.
Yeah.
It just, all of that works for me, and this movie for me is a definite 8 out of 10. I know it's not as action packed as I should say, as
Hmm.
these other movies, but just what Karloff does and what Carl Front does with the atmosphere in this, I can't deny that at all.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. All right. So CC, saving the best for last, of course. Quick thoughts on the mummy.
Fuming this whole time. So tipping our tie to a 3 against 2. I love this movie. The Mummy is one of my all-time favorite horror films. It's one I have returned to again and again and again because, like Allison was saying, this is a gothic romance horror film. This is
Okay.
the
Okay.
horror. Like the horror is kind of the romance. Like in that way, this movie is the progenitor of a film like Candyman, right?
Yes,
Where
Yes.
yes.
I get. Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
where what hap- where like the monster isn't like Frankenstein's. Like the mummy is more like Dracula, where the horror comes a little more from the menace and the power and the kind of this aggressive, again, Alice pointed this out, but like this aggressive like especially around the girl, but this aggressive like sexual tension that exists, and this power and this authority. Like every scene Karloff is in, he commands the room. Like yes, he's not wrapped in bandages shuffling around. And if you want that mummy, the sequels with Lon Chaney Jr. and the 1970s Hammer version with Christopher Lee will give you your wrapped in bandages mummy. Like I feel like you could if you renamed this movie something like The Necromancer or something, because it's about this undead sorcerer basically.
Yeah.
Like in this, rather than a shuffling mute bandaged creature, this is like this undead sorcerer that has returned because he is like looking for the woman that he basically damned himself in the pursuit of. Like he is the way he is because he was in pursuit of this woman, and now he is searching for her. And like I will remind you also that this is like the 1930s, so this kind of like, it isn't based on a novel. It's kind of more based on this very present, what would have been a very modern horror of like this kind of rush and renewed interest in Egyptology and archaeology, and this like renewed. So in that sense, for its time, it's a very modern horror film, and it's a very like menacing, intimidating, and like the fact that Karloff's character is this like he's kind of comes off as an Emperor Palpatine, where he seems very feeble and unassuming until he starts wrecking people's shit, and then it's like, oh god, and then he's stopping people's hearts from across the way. He has the leading lady like tied up, and like he's trying to mummify her, and the whole second half of the movie is basically this battle of wits, again like Dracula type situation, where it's this battle of wits between the mummy and the one guy and his dad, and it's this whole back and forth as they're fighting for the soul of this woman. And in that regard, it's very tense, very powerful. Of all the movies, of all the Universal films that we're talking about, the scene that gave me the most chills, and still like, if I'm like sitting by myself on a quiet night, I try not to think about this, but that opening scene where the mummy first comes to life is legitimately chilling. It is, especially since like it's one of those cases of like Alfred Hitchcock's Two Men Talking About Baseball, and you show the audience there's a bomb under the table, right? Because we know that thing is moving. We can see it very slowly. It's like with no cares in the world. He's just like slowly like unwrapping itself and like moving. But the guy doesn't notice that. The idiot guy is busy happily translating the scroll, not a care in the world. He doesn't know that there's this unnameable thing. This unnameable, and then this like Lovecraftian touch of the fact that when he does realize what's going on, the shock is so much that like we learn off screen that he goes insane. It's this very Lovecraftian touch, and and the whole thing of this like horror is like this remnant of this older ancient world. The flashbacks are brilliant. I love ancient Egyptian culture, and I love I'm an absolute ancient Egypt nerd. So like that, the setting really appeals to me, and the flashbacks to ancient Egypt and the like story, like this movie's tragic reincarnation love story is so effective that Francis Ford Coppola stole it for his Dracula movie. Like that is like I will. Part of the reason I am not as much of a fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula is because that movie takes all of its best ideas from either The Wolfman or The Mummy. It is like and
true.
And in the process, kind of skips out on actually bringing some like it is closer to Bram Stoker's original novel than most adaptations, but it still ends up skipping a lot of stuff, and like a lot of stuff to humanize Dracula is lifted directly from either The Wolfman or The Mummy, and especially The Mummy stuff. And no, you can still see this film's fingerprints on any kind of like more contemporary gothic romance horror film, and the setting is inventive, and it's like, and coming right off Frankenstein and Dracula, it's a very bold movie in that regard. Like it's such a it keeps the Gothic feel, but it's such a drastic change of setting and time period from the other two, which almost could have happened next to each other. Like they almost could have happened in like neighboring castles. But then like The Mummy is such a radical departure for that, and like no, I this movie is a 10 out of 10 for me. I revisit this
Okay.
so much. I love this movie ever. I think the only, as far as like favorite horror films, the only one that I like better than this one is Candyman. So like,
Right.
Right.
All right. Okay.